shit time, okay? And it was embarrassing. And, losing all your money is all that. But maybe it was necessary.
Stuttgart was supposed to be a clean, predictable week of elite tennis. You had your stars lined up. You had your storylines written. Iga Swiatek, Elena Rybakina, Barbara Krejcikova, a shiny Porsche sitting courtside waiting for whoever could outlast the field on indoor clay. The organizers had done everything right. Top seeds, big names, sold-out infrastructure. A prestige event with decades of history behind it. Then one injury notice changed everything. Chin Wen-young pulled out. And the moment her replacement was announced, something happened that nobody inside professional tennis had a satisfying explanation for. Ticket prices didn't drift upward. They spiked hard. And the name driving that spike wasn't a Grand Slam champion. It wasn't a top 10 player. It was a 20-year-old from the Philippines, ranked 46th in the world, who had just snuck into the main draw through a withdrawal slot. Her name is Alex. And if you've been paying attention to women's tennis over the last 18 months, none of what happened in Stuttgart surprised you. But for a lot of people inside the tennis establishment, the people who've spent their careers believing that prestige and ranking and prize money are what sell tickets, this was genuinely disorienting. Boris Becker, 6 Grand Slams, Stuttgart royalty, a man who has watched this tournament evolve for decades, went noticeably quiet when her impact on the event came up. That kind of silence from someone like him says more than any analysis could. So let's actually talk about what happened, why it happened, and why this is just the beginning of something much larger than a single week in Germany. To understand Stuttgart, you have to go back further, not to April 2026, not even to the beginning of this season. You have to go back to a girl who picked up a racket at age 3.5, coached by her grandfather in the Philippines, grinding through the junior circuit until she was good enough to catch the attention of one of the most respected academies in the sport. At 13 years old, Alex moved to Spain to join the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. Think about what that actually means. 13, away from home, away from everything familiar, training alongside some of the best young players in the world on the surface that separates the serious from the exceptional. She graduated from that academy in 2023. She stood on stage with Nadal himself alongside Iga Swiatek. And within 3 years of walking off that stage, she was beating world number ones at WTA 1000 events and making ticket markets in Germany react to a single tweet. That development curve isn't normal. It's almost unsettling in how fast it's moved. The 2025 Miami Open is where the wider tennis world first had to take Alex seriously. She came through that draw like someone who had been waiting for a big stage. She beat Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova in the round of 16. Then she faced Aryna Sabalenka, world number 1 at the time, and dismantled her 6-2, 7-5. Not a squeaky win, not a fortunate bounce, a statement. Rafa Nadal posted about it. Boris Becker replied with one word. Anyone who understands what it takes to impress those two men on a tennis court knows that moment meant something. She reached a career high ranking of 29 on the back of that tournament. Her fan base, already one of the loudest and most devoted followings in the entire sport, shifted into a completely different gear. Fast forward to April 2026. Alex arrives in Stuttgart ranked 46, having dropped spots after a round of 16 exit in Miami earlier this year. On paper, that looks like regression. In reality, she was 14 wins and 8 losses on the season. She had knocked out Jasmine Paolini, world number 8, in Dubai back in February. She was sitting 16th in the WTA finals race with nearly 800 points. The form was absolutely there. The trajectory was still pointing up. The ranking number just hadn't caught up yet. Stuttgart was supposed to be a qualification campaign. That was the actual plan. Grind through the prelims, see if she could force her way into the main draw the hard way. Then Jung withdrew, and everything changed in the time it takes to post a social media announcement. The tournament confirmed Alex as the replacement. Her fans saw it, and before most tennis journalists had even filed their first report of the week, the secondary ticket market had already reacted. Prices jumped, not for Rybakina, not for Swiatek, for a replacement entry at 46 in the world. Now, here's what makes that genuinely remarkable. Stuttgart is not some developing event still trying to find its identity. This tournament has been anchored by Porsche sponsorship since its founding. It has hosted some of the greatest players in the history of the sport. The infrastructure, the prestige, the crowd, it's all been built over decades. And a single main draw entry announcement from a 20-year-old who technically entered through the back door moved that market faster than any headline name on the original draw sheet. When you sit with that fact for a moment, it stops being a fun story and starts being a signal. The first match she played in the main draw was against Leylah Fernandez. On the surface, that sounds like a straightforward first-round fixture. But the layers to that match were extraordinary. Fernandez is a former US Open finalist. She has 5 WTA titles. Her serve is a genuine weapon. She wins 75% of points on her own service games. Her mother is Filipino-Canadian. So you had 2 left-handed players with Filipino roots opening the main draw of a WTA 500 event, while a crowd that had literally bought its way into that building specifically to watch Alex made noise that made the whole arena feel like a home match. Multiple outlets described that atmosphere as something Stuttgart had never quite experienced before. Not at this stage of the draw, not for this matchup. And remember, Rybakina was in the building. Swiatek was in the building. The match drawing the most electricity was a first-round fixture between 2 players outside the top 20. That's not normal. That's not something you can manufacture with marketing budgets or broadcast deals. That is what organic connection between a player and a fan base actually looks like when it reaches a certain level. The draw Alex landed in Stuttgart was genuinely brutal. She's in the same half as Rybakina, the top seed, and the reigning Australian Open champion. If she gets past Fernandez, she faces a serious test in round 2. Then, potentially Paolini, the number 5 seed, a player Alex has already beaten this season. And if she navigates that, the quarterfinals could mean Krejcikova or Swiatek. It's the kind of route that tests every dimension of your game. Her clay record coming into this week was 4 losses in her last 5 matches on the surface. That's the honest, uncomfortable statistic. Stuttgart on indoor clay at this level is as hard an exam as she could have been handed, and the ticket market still spiked before she played a single point. That detail matters more than any win or loss this week. Her fans aren't buying tickets because they've run the numbers and decided she's going to win the Porsche. They're buying tickets because watching Alex at her best, even when she loses, is worth the price of the flight from Manila. The 2025 Miami semifinal proved something important about how she performs when the atmosphere lifts her. She doesn't just play better. The crowd becomes a variable. Opponents feel it. The stadium itself shifts. That's a rare quality, and it doesn't develop overnight. It comes from years of building genuine trust with the people watching. Now, let's zoom out for a second, because there's a commercial dimension to this story that almost nobody is talking about. The WTA Tour is actively working to grow its presence in Asia. There is no WTA 500 event in the Philippines. The biggest domestic professional tennis moment Filipino fans got this year was a WTA 125 in Manila, a challenger-level event. And yet, those same fans are booking flights to Stuttgart, Germany, to watch their player compete against the best in the world. Tournament directors across the entire calendar are watching this happen and taking notes. Alex is opening markets without trying to. She went to Lyon earlier this year and brought a crowd that City hadn't seen for a women's tennis match in years. Stuttgart is seeing it now. Madrid is next. When she competes at the WTA 1000 Mutua Madrid Open later this month, the same thing will happen again. That is a commercially significant development that goes well beyond one player's ranking trajectory. When Becker went quiet, it wasn't because he didn't know who Alex was. He knew. He'd been paying attention since the Sabalenka match. What stopped him was the realization that a single withdrawal announcement had moved the market of a tournament he's loved his entire adult life in a way that established Grand Slam champions hadn't managed. He spent his career in a sport that expanded slowly and deliberately, building audiences one decade at a time. What Alex is generating organic, measurable, financially real demand across European cities 10,000 kilometers from where she grew up has no real precedent at her age or her current ranking. There are players who've been in the top 10 for years who don't produce this effect. And she's doing it at 46 in the world on a surface that hasn't been kind to her, in cities where she's never played before. Her WTA finals race position tells the real story better than her ranking does. She's 16th in the race at 46th in the rankings. That gap only exists when a player is consistently going deep in high-level draws rather than collecting comfortable wins at smaller events. It's the profile of someone who performs when the stage gets bigger, not the opposite. The moment the pressure increases, something in her switches. You can see it in how she plays. You can feel it in how the crowd responds. She doesn't shrink, she expands. There's one more thread to pull here, and it ties the whole thing together cleanly. When Alex graduated from the Nadal Academy in 2023, she was 18 years old. She'd spent 5 years away from home, learning the game on clay in Spain, building the technical foundation that takes most players until their mid-20s to develop properly. She came out of that academy with a game designed for big courts and big moments. 3 years later, she's beating top 10 players, sitting in the WTA Finals race top 20, and generating the kind of crowd response in European indoor arenas that Boris Becker hasn't witnessed in this tournament since its most significant eras. The establishment wants to call this a social media phenomenon, a cultural moment that will fade once the novelty wears off. That framing is wrong, and the numbers already prove it. The wins are real. The ranking points are real. The demand in Stuttgart was real before she played a single match. And Roland Garros is still weeks away. Clay season, the very surface that's given her trouble recently, is still unfolding. Stuttgart is part of her process on that surface. Madrid comes next, and then Paris. The French Open on clay under the lights at a stadium full of noise with the whole tennis world watching. If she finds her form on clay the way she found it on hard courts in Miami last year, the conversation around Alex stops being about potential and starts being about titles. Right now, she's 20 years old with 14 wins, a market-moving presence in cities she's never called home, and a draw in Stuttgart that would make players twice her experience nervous. The ticket prices already told you where this is going. The tennis will confirm it.